Councillor Robinson, you are now live on YouTube.
Thank you and good evening and a warm welcome to the Rushcliffe Borough Council Cabinet meeting on a very cold and wet December evening. I just need to remind everyone that this Cabinet meeting is being live streamed for YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities, Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. All participants are reminded to ensure the audio for the meeting is as clear as possible and microphones should all be muted as a default setting to keep background noise to a minimum unless you're speaking. Firstly, could I just ask all Cabinet members to confirm they can see and hear proceedings? Councillor Edavine.
Yes, I can see and hear.
Yeah, Councillor Brennan.
Yes.
Councillor English.
Yes, that's confirmed.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, confirmed.
Councillor Upton.
Yes.
Now, if could have officers please to confirm, Mrs. Marriott.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Mrs. Sewell.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Mr. Linfield.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
And Mrs. Tambini.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Could also just ask the two group leaders who are in attendance to confirm that we can see and hear you. So, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Gray.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. So I'd just like to remind you, if you members would like to speak, if you could use the hand function as we go forward. In respect of voting, I will ask any councillors who wish to abstain or object to actually raise their hand first. If no councillor does, then we'll take it that the item is actually being carried unanimously. So just moving on to the first item on the agenda. Apologies for absence, Mrs. Tambini.
There are no apologies for absence this evening, Councillor Robinson. Okay,
declarations of interest? None. Okay, moving on. Could I have a proposer for the minutes of the 8th of November 2020, please, to accept those minutes? Councillor Edavine. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Moore, do you second the minutes? Thank you very much. So proposed by Councillor Edavine, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those who are against or wish to abstain from accepting those minutes, please show. No. Okay, if we could take those minutes as read, please, for the 8th of November 2020. Okay, next item on the agenda, we could come to opposition group leaders' questions. So I believe that we have two questions tonight. So could I start, please, with Councillor Gray?
Good evening, all. My question is regarding the Freeport, and given the status of given the special status of a Freeport, do we know what the likely rates implications of businesses that are set up within it would be?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gray. You do raise a very good point there. Particularly, I think the background to your question is the fact that currently, obviously, the power station contributes many millions of pounds worth of business rates. And as we know from previous cabinet reports and reports for council, the power station will be looking to be decommissioned by 2025. Now, I do stress at the moment that these are only proposals for the Freeport, but we have clear indications is that businesses that operate within a Freeport facility can apply for 100% tax business rate relief. And once that is accepted, but then the government then provides a grant to the council to actually make up that income. So in theory on that, then the actual council should not actually lose out in terms of any rates that will be collected from that area. But I do stress this, obviously we're still in the development phase of that. But I think it's a very important point, and it's something that this cabinet is very, very aware of due to obviously the huge amount of rates that's currently generated from the power station. If that's all right, Councillor Gray, do you have a supplementary question at all on this?
Yes, please. No, that was a fantastic answer. Good to have that reassurance. Interesting to hear about the that the government would back that rate shortfall there. I mean, have we also looking at the further economic benefits of the Freeport in that case? You know, in addition to rates, how else do we think that would affect the council?
In terms of the economic benefits of a Freeport, in terms of going forward?
Yes.
Is that the question with it?
Yeah.
In terms of a Freeport, I mean, obviously there are models which have been looked at across the world, and obviously there are one or two in the UK as well. The main benefit certainly is attracting employment is a very big because obviously new businesses, it's very attractive for the new business to actually set up there. The other, of course, is investment in that, in terms of the local economy, obviously with things like construction and build. So the general economic activity covers an awful lot greater area than the actual Freeport itself. When I see that Rushcliffe would benefit greatly, particularly from the employment, and let's be absolutely honest in terms of jobs at the moment, we are showing record unemployment in Rushcliffe at the moment in view of the pandemic. So the biggest benefit I think to this borough would certainly be on the employment side, but I think the general economic side would be certainly very, very strong as well. Obviously aspirations in terms of the power station site, in terms of research and development as well. You could also see sort of benefits across Rushcliffe, particularly if it just goes down sort of the green economy road that way. Is that okay, Councillor Gray? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, if I could ask you to put your question, please, to Councillor Moore.
Thank you. My question is similarly a long-term thing about item 6 on Chapel Lane in Bingham. The proposal in the report is for the council to borrow 7.5 million now, costing Rushcliffe residents and future council taxpayers £310,000 on each of the following 40 years at current interest rates. Interest rates currently are as low as they get. History shows that interest rates change considerably and cannot be assumed. In 1979, they rose to 17%. Unthinkable now, but possible within a 40-year timescale. So if future interest rates rise, will the debt on future taxpayers increase? And at an average of 8%, what would that mean over the 40 years? Thank you.
Yeah, interest rates on when you're borrowing money are pretty important, and we've got very low interest rates at the moment, and evidence shows that it doesn't look as though interest rates will increase over the next couple of years with the state of the economy. Currently, if you borrow from the Public Works Loan Board, you borrow at under 2%. Now, the good news for you, when we borrow the 7.5 million, if it is 7.5 million, we borrow at, let's say we were borrowing today, we borrow at 2%, which is a fixed rate for 10, 20, 30 or 40 years, depending on how. So even if in 20 years' time we get 15% interest rates, we will still be borrowing at 2%.
Councillor Jones, do you have a supplementary question?
No, just thank you for that explanation and assurance for the public. Thank you.
It's exactly the same as a fixed interest rate mortgage. So,
okay, if we could then move on to the next item on the agenda. Do we have any citizens' questions, Mrs. Stambini?
No, Councillor Robinson, we don't have any citizens' questions this evening.
Okay, can move on to the next item on the agenda is the Chapel Lane Bingham development, which I will take forward. I'd just like to take members forward in terms of a timeline on this project. So going back to 2019, where we set our corporate strategy plan, we identified that a leisure centre was needed in the Bingham area for a number of reasons, particularly in terms of the projected population growth. And secondly, the current facility was residing on land which we didn't own, so we didn't control it. But also the facilities were very limited and very challenging. So there are really two big drivers for the this Chapel Lane development with the leisure centre. So going forward to February 2019, this cabinet approved the budget of £20 million. And then this was also supported then at full council in March 2020. Sorry, beg your pardon, 2019, it went to full council. And then in January 2020, the Cabinet approved the RIBA Stage 4 design and cost plan, which obviously then was setting out things for the design ready for it to go out for tender. In June of 2019, we agreed to establish a member working group, which was chaired by Councillor Edivine, and that was cross-party. It's met 7 times to date at the moment. And the main objective of that member group was to really shape the design process with particular emphasis on reducing carbon emissions. And obviously with the leisure centre in particular, it's very challenging with the swimming pool and of course heating and things like air conditioning and all these things. So that member working group has been reporting back 7 times now to that. In November 2020, this group met and looked at adapting the tenders that have actually come in, and also shaping recommendations for the Cabinet, and supported and approved that process. In terms of the actual tender itself, the responses were reviewed with officers and with Councillor Robinson, Councillor Moore, Councillor Edivine a number of weeks ago. And that was a very, very in-depth look on a cost and quality basis of the actual tender. So what I'm stressing here, this isn't just about cheapest wins. So there's a very, very comprehensive appraisal system of all the tenders, with the key objective is that it will delivered within budget, delivered on time to the standards that this council actually demands of its facilities. So following that meeting, and the recommendation I bring you is that firm D, we would recommend would actually is the preferred contractor. As I say, based on the appraisal system that we've actually put forward. One thing I just need to stress to members of the Cabinet, that this report doesn't cover the operational side of the leisure centre to be built, or neither does it actually cover the operational requirements of the site we'll be leaving at Toot Hill as well, because we will actually be having some presence there. So this is purely about the tendering facility. The other thing I need to add, obviously, in terms of the financing, there's going to be 2 external finance sources here, which is with the LEP and with the SUDS. And they will be contributing to the actual build on this. So I would like to move the recommendation on page 2, section 2, which usually for Cabinet is an all recommendation. So the recommendation I'm moving tonight is that we'll appoint firm D as preferred contractor for the full development, subject to external funding being secured, the external funding being the 2 sources I've just spoken about. Or if external funding for the office is not secured, the tender be accepted for the leisure centre and community hall build only. A further report will be brought back to future Cabinet to seek a way forward regarding the office element of development prior to accepting the tender for this full development. Sorry, I should just have added, of course, that this actually covers 3 aspects of the Chapel Lane development, which is the leisure centre, the community hall and office hub, and the actual tender covers all 3 of those items. So I move those recommendations on page 2. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Edivine. Still on mute.
Get there eventually.
Okay, get there.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to second the recommendation, and would thank the members of the working group for the work that they've put in so far in helping to shape the future of this project. And the member working group will, of course, continue to meet until the project is finished. So we are now at a stage that we must decide on the tender process by the end of January. And within the next fortnight, we should also hear if we've been successful with our bids for outside funding, which were referred to by Councillor Robinson. And we clearly have high hopes that these will be successful and we can proceed with recommendation A. If the outcome for outside funding is not secured, then we would not wish to immediately proceed with the building of the offices and would need to reassess other sources of funding, perhaps such as the recently announced Levelling Up Fund that the Chancellor has created. And this is the reason for having Part B of the recommendation. In proceeding without commissioning the office element of the project, we still have the opportunity to proceed at a later date if it was financially viable. What is of very high importance, and I think this was stressed by Councillor Robinson, is that we do not delay the implementation of the main part of the project, which is delivery of the new leisure and community facilities for Bingham and its surrounding population. So I'm very happy to second the recommendation outlined by Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Councillor Edovin. Do I have any other members who would like to speak on this item at all? No? Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to say a few words. I'd just like to endorse Councillor Edovin's comments on the member working group. I think it's really important, this input that we've had to date, and in terms of going forward in terms of the design, because should this recommendation go forward, we're then going to be into the detail of design, and our experience with the arena actually saw that the input from members was very, very important, and was key to the success of the delivery of that project. The other thing I'd just like to say, I'm absolutely delighted. This is what we're talking about in the middle of a pandemic in terms of our ambitions of a council. We're talking about here delivering an absolutely key and strategic community facility. And this isn't just for Bingham, it's really about the big area around there that we can provide. Hopefully the officers will go ahead, and that'll be a real boost for businesses as they move through their evolution. And of course, the community facilities is something that's been wanted there for a long, long time. So if we can bring the three things together, I think it will be a real asset, not just for Bingham, for Rushcliffe and for many of our residents. So proposed by myself, as set out on sorry, I've just lost my notes. Yeah, beg your pardon. As set out there under section 2, with the section 9 A and B. As I say, it's an all, and dependent on obviously the external funding. Seconded by Councillor Edovin. Anybody against or would like to abstain in terms of the recommendation? No, that's great. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. So we have, which is the Freeport application. Again, that's myself. So back in February of 2020, the government commenced a consultation about developing freeports in the UK, and in response to that, the East Midlands have set up a working group, which was led by the two LEPs here in Nottingham, Derby, and also Leicester. Obviously, very keen to look at the potential opportunities that a Freeport would actually offer. In November of 2020, the government have then released and have formalised a prospectus which declares that they are looking at actually 10 Freeports across the country. Now, obviously, with Freeports, they could be on the actual coast, so in terms of the ports themselves. But obviously, what we're very interested in is what's called an inland port. And the proposal from the East Midlands would have two sites. It would have the airport, obviously, in terms of getting goods in and out. But more important and more strategic for Rushcliffe would be the Radcliffe-on-Soar power station site. So, in terms of the working group, is now developing that proposition to respond formally to the government in terms of a Freeport application based on prospectus that's actually been put out. I think it's just remind members what really the real objective of Freeport is, and I know we touched it in the question earlier from Councillor Gray, but this is a special economic zone which creates a favourable business environment which attracts inward investment, trade, and above all jobs. And as I said earlier in the question response, there cannot be a more important time at the moment for this council to encourage and bring jobs alive. And we see this as an incredibly important opportunity to do so. The Freeport particularly focuses on making customs much simpler, and also delaying the point that duties and taxes are paid. And of course, not only is the challenge of the pandemic, but it looks very shortly we'll be having the challenges of Brexit. And of course, that has huge implications in terms of export and imports. So I can only see Freeport's becoming more and more important, even whatever the output of the Brexit negotiations will actually be. As I stressed, we've got the two sites. And strategically, our major interest is around the power station, but it fits very nicely with the airport in terms of delivery. I'd just also like to stress to members that this is being done in parallel with the work of the Development Corporation, which was discussed at the previous cabinet. I brought a paper, and also to the full council last week. So, of course, it's very important these are very much working in tandem together, because the Development Corporation obviously covers these two sites in addition to Towton. I do have to flag the Ratcliffe site does have challenges for the council, particularly two major ones is that it's not allocated in our local plan. And second, of course, it is Greenbelt. And we must never forget that. And of course, the council has really got a very strong focus to make sure that planning or any applications, particularly in our borough, are very carefully managed and looked at. So it is important that I do flag to the cabinet tonight that with that land there are the two major challenges in terms of as we go forward. And these are reflected in the recommendations that I would like to bring to you tonight. So I would like to move the recommendations that are set out there, and they're on page 7, item 2, and item B. Sorry, I've just moved my papers there. So if I could just read out item A is endorsing the principal submission of the Freeport proposition paper to government for the East Midlands to include the Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station, and approves a leader providing a commitment of the council support and agreement to the proposed Freeport for those areas for which Rushcliffe has statutory responsibility, including planning and business rates to support the delivery of the proposals. As Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station is not currently an allocated site within the local plan, and the whole site is washed over by Greenbelt, the letter will give the council support for the Freeport in bid in this context, while not fettering its discretion and statutory duties in its local planning authority. So really it's just reflecting the two challenges we have with that site in terms of the Greenbelt, and of course with the it not actually being in the local plan. So I'd like to move those two recommendations. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Edderby.
Yes, thank you. I would like to second the recommendation that you've just outlined. The opportunity to create a Freeport around East Midlands Airport, and including the site of some of the soon-to-be decommissioned power station at Ratcliffe-on-Soar, as you quite rightly say, could bring tremendous investment opportunities to Rushcliffe. It does need to work alongside with the Development Corporation, and together with those proposals, we could see massive investment in our borough, creating prosperity and jobs. Submission of the Freeport proposal is a wider proposition than just Rushcliffe and is being coordinated by the D2N2 LEP, who have appointed Vivid Economics to work on behalf of all of the members of the Freeport Working Group. And it's important that we as a borough support and participate in this process. Just over half of the land at the Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station site could be available, giving a potential 154 hectare site that could be part of the Freeport alongside East Midlands Airport. And whilst it is a separate process from the Development Corporation, it's important to maintain strong links between the two projects as they progress and work together. So I have no hesitation in supporting the recommendation, and I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Edvin. Any other comments anybody would like to make from members at all in Cabinet? Yes, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to add my support, and this paper is extremely exciting actually in terms of the potential initiative that it presents for the council to develop on this site, and at a time when we absolutely crucially need it given what's happening to the economy through the COVID crisis. And I think it's really important as well to mention that we've got a lot of cross-party support for this initiative, and therefore one hopes it's going to be hugely successful and a great contributor to the economy of Rushcliffe going forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. No, thank you, Councillor Brennan. It has been heartening in the work this year to see all the East Midlands really coming together and to show in Westminster that we have got a very unique bid here with the site of the power station and the airport. It's unique, obviously, because it's inland. It's not actually a seaport, but we think it's got the right infrastructure in terms of obviously motorway, railway, air. So it has that unique position. Obviously, we talked earlier in terms of the impact of rates. I hope that will be mitigated then by the government in terms of giving the incentives to businesses to bring them into that area and create their jobs, but obviously absolutely ensuring that Rushcliffe doesn't lose out on the overall picture in terms of its business rates. And I'm confident the government will actually deliver that when we actually move forward. One thing I'm sorry, if I could just ask Mrs. Marriott, what is the timescale for decisions on the Freeport?
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. The bid needs to be submitted by the 5th of February.
Right, but we don't have a decision time, do we?
I don't know what the decision time frame is, but the bids are in by 5th of February. It's a competitive process, and they are looking at no more than 10. So I should think it will be a couple of, a month or two before we hear back whether it's been successful.
Yeah. And as I mentioned in my presentation, what is absolutely key here is support with the Development Corporation as well. So we actually have some very, very key bodies with Development Corporation, with the LEPs as well as all the local authorities, as well as Uniper and the site, as well as East Midlands Airport. So it's a really, really powerful team. And I think it really will show on that bid to Westminster when it finally hits there in February. Okay, thank you very much for that. So the recommendations, as I set out there on page 7, item 2A and B, seconded by Councillor Edvin. Anybody who wish to abstain or object to movement of those recommendations? Great, lovely, thank you very much. Carried unanimously. Moving on to the next item, which is item 8, is the draft planning enforcement policy. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this report is all about how we enforce planning controls. And unlike the determination of planning applications, the actual enforcement is discretionary. But the National Planning Policy Framework does recommend that we should have local enforcement plans to give the public some confidence in the actual system of planning. So we've got a planning enforcement code of practice which is due for review in March next year. Now, code of practice is very different to a policy.
And given concerns expressed about enforcement by some members of the public, councillors and officers, a draft policy has been produced by our Growth and Development Group, Scrutiny Group, and this is appended to the report. A policy has far more weight than a code of practice, and this is why we're recommending that this draft policy goes to public consultation for 6 weeks. Therefore, I propose the recommendation at item 2 in the report, namely, it's recommended that Cabinet approves the draft planning enforcement policy for the purpose of public consultation to last for a period of 6 weeks prior to the policy being referred back to Council for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Upton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I strongly welcome this new draft enforcement policy. We know that planning conditions will only retain the support of the public and compliance by applicants and developers if there's a clear policy of enforcement. And it's come up on many occasions where people have felt that the enforcement side, because it is discretionary, has not been as obvious or transparent as the actual planning process. The policy, as Councillor Upton has said, replaces what was previously a code of practice, and it makes clear the means of enforcement, so the powers that will be used when investigating alleged breaches and the process through which the council will take action. It's very clear. Enforcement of planning controls is an important part of protecting our natural built and historic environment, and it's also something that we know that many residents of the borough feel very strongly about. And I'm very pleased that if we approve this tonight, it will be subject to a minimum of 6-week public consultation. Replacing the code with a clear policy should strengthen the confidence the public has in our willingness and in our ability to act where necessary. I would like, therefore, to second the recommendation to approve this policy as set out by Councillor Upton.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brennan. No, I totally agree, and with the pressures with development across the borough, it's very, very important that we have a very resilient policy which has the confidence of the public. So I would ask that the public do participate in the 6-week consultation. I think that's really important. I think from our point of view, we've got a responsibility to make sure we publish that. I'm sure that Mrs. Marriott and team will be publishing that consultation and making sure people like parish councils in particular who are very important consultees, for instance, on enforcement, that they participate and we get their views in. Could you remind me, Councillor, when are we looking to bring this in? So after the consultation, to become actually started?
I haven't got an actual date, but it will be when we've presumably adopted it at the full council early next year.
Yeah, sorry, you're nodding your head, Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, Councillor, I better not say Councillor Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, sorry, it might be a Councillor Mitchell. But yeah, sorry, Mr. Mitchell, yeah, could you just confirm, is that the case then? So that'll be March?
Yes, that is the case. It will go subject to the consultation being acceptable. We would report back to March Council and it would be adopted from that point onwards.
It will be adopted in there. And in terms of enforcement, so anything after that point would come under the new policy. That's great. Doesn't matter when it was approved or whenever. In terms of the development, it was enforcement was against. That's basically what I'm talking about there. So, yeah, no, we understand that. Obviously, enforcement is very complicated, but as I say, I think with the pressures we're under in terms of development there, it's very important that we have the confidence and with the public in terms of moving forward. Any other comments at all on enforcement on the policy? Yeah, Councillor Edderby.
Yeah, I'd just like to say the fact, obviously, with planning and its enforcement, it's one that as members and ward members, we get involved in a lot, and we're asked questions a lot by members of our areas, and it is an important thing for residents, and so I'm really pleased to see that we are looking at adopting a procedure rather than a code of practice. So I think it will help a lot of people, and it will help our residents as well.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Moore.
Councillor already been talked about the public, but we go out in the sticks here. We go to a lot of parish council meetings, and I just think having a really good planning enforcement gives our planners a lot of support. gives our planning department a lot of credibility as well. There's nothing worse, and I've got one on at the moment, being at a parish council meeting when they say, well, Gordon, we discussed this, we debated this, and now the guy's built it in the wrong place and you're doing nothing about it.
Yeah.
I think this planning enforcement policy will give us councillors a weapon to help our planners. And to me, it's incredibly important.
Yeah. I don't like to use the word weapon. I think strong advice, I think, would perhaps be a better in terms of it. I think it's a very good point, Councillor Martin. The other point is that obviously the planning committee works very hard to make sure that developments have planning conditions, and it will give them confidence to say, actually, if these aren't adhered to, we've got a very strong policy then to enforce. I think we also need to acknowledge, obviously, the issue, of course, is resource, though. This policy doesn't help resource. And I know it's something that Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Marriott have got to balance to make sure we have the right amount of resource to ensure that we do have a resilient enforcement policy which is actually working for us, because a policy in its own right doesn't do anything, does it? It's got to be the resource to actually do that, and we appreciate under very difficult times that's very, very challenging. But there is one phrase I think is very important, and that's public confidence. We must have that confidence, and to be seen to be a council that is rigorously expects all developments to comply with the conditions that we actually set. So I think that's very important. Any other comments at all? Yeah, Councillor English.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a good policy to give some teeth to what we had before. I know it's not just the one-off builds that we're having problems with; it's the major developments where we've been let down. It seems quite a weak front we've got to attack them with for them to comply. So yeah, I do welcome it for the larger developments.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so those recommendations are set out by Councillor Upton and proposed, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Anybody against or wishes to abstain? No. Good, thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Next item, now you've had a rest from me, you've got to come back to me again, and this is the COVID-19 progress and response header that's actually in there. I will apologise at the start that this is quite a long paper. There's a huge amount of information in this paper, but effectively this is an update narrative really for Cabinet since last May, and it actually sets out really the pandemic in terms of what we're doing both internally and externally. But apologies, I'm not going to go in detail. I'm going to pick up some of the major headlines because it is a very, very comprehensive report on this. As I said, in terms of internally, it's really how the pandemic has affected our services internally in terms of the delivery, but also externally on how the council is actually supporting our local businesses and our local communities as well. And of course, this report, as I talked about with Chapel Lane, is something I do really want to point out. It also reflects our commitment to delivering the key capital projects as well. This isn't just about reactive responses to the pandemics. It's absolutely ensuring that this council is committed to delivering the major projects such as the crematorium, and as we've seen earlier, the leisure centre facilities in Bingham as well with that. If you could just, page 44 actually sets out the national lockdown measures, the timescale of them. It seems a long time when you look back, doesn't it, when we start going back to the 15th of June, and you can just see all the different stages that as a council we had to react to, and it hasn't been very easy with all the different regulations that's come down from central government. So for example, the 15th June, non-essential retail opens, but then the 4th of July, hairdressers, barbers, hospitality opens, and so on. So that actually sets out there in table 1 and brings us up to date at the moment, well, to the 5th of November where we started the lockdown. And of course, if you look at 4.4, it's actually been superseded, because there it asks questions of, were we going to go into tier 3 or were we going through tier 2? As we know, we're on an absolute cliff edge, but unfortunately we're like one of those contestant games, and we actually fell over into tier 3, unfortunately, obviously based on a lot of factors that we know of, and we've got to work very hard as authority and across the region to make sure that we can turn that. And of course, those items will, those tiers will be reviewed by the 16th of December. Just looking at the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, the report talks about a very comprehensive review done by D2N2. I'd just like to highlight a couple of figures there pertinent to Rushcliffe. And one is the huge reduction by 38.1% of the GVA of the economy, and that really is the economy. So that's a drop of over a third in our economy. So you can just see how much that has fractured our businesses, customer demand, expenditure, construction, development, all the things that really make up our economy. So that is a real startling figure, and I think it's absolutely unprecedented. I mentioned about unemployment earlier in the cabinet, and we've seen unemployment actually go up by 183%, the claims within Rushcliffe. Again, absolutely unprecedented. We've been very proud of Rushcliffe that we've been almost at full employment, and to see, say, these numbers coming through. And we've seen over 30% of our working population furloughed. Personally, I think the furlough scheme has been an absolute lifesaver, and I do congratulate the government on really getting the furlough scheme out, but also implementing it so effectively across our businesses to make sure that it can retain the jobs, particularly within the borough. It's certainly not going to retain everybody, and we know there have been job losses and there will be in the future. But without the furlough scheme, definitely there have been an awful lot more of unemployment as we got there. So one very big issue the report brings out is across businesses that affects everybody's cash flow. And I'm delighted that the council has played a huge part in delivering the business grants. And I don't think, well, there's very few things that this council has done more important over the last 12 months than deliver those grants, delivering cash into businesses, absolute lifesavers. And I'd just like to pay testament to Peter Linfield and all his team, to members who've worked to get the policies in place as quickly as possible, to make them fair, to make them deliverable, but most importantly, to make them effective. And that was all about the targeting of those grants. It was all about making sure they went to the people who needed it most, but also most importantly was the speed. I don't like to compare ourselves with other councils all the time, although I really do. But I'm so proud of what we did with businesses, and not just once, on many occasions. So as I say, I'm absolutely delighted with the work that Peter Linfield and the actual team. So those grants, as I say, have been very complicated. I've no idea how many grants are available at the moment. I've lost track from all different tier changes to all the different ones for the hospitality, etc. But I'm sure Mr. Linfield's got it absolutely controlled. We know exactly what grants. But just to really, in all seriousness, say the complexity when these were being drawn up in terms of the sectors, the size of business, definitions, reflecting the impact of COVID. So that is actually set out, as I say, is on Appendix B. And as I say, I think that's been a hugely important part that we've actually played as a district there. I want to just mention the Local Resilience Forum. This is the partnership agencies that we play a very key role as, and it's reacted to the pandemic. It's actually set out on 4.12 is the objectives and the principles there. So you can actually see those as they're set out. I know we've been practicing a Local Resilience Forum over the years and things for pandemic to actually see us now in action. You can see theirs, and of course, first and foremost, the top of that list is actually saving and protecting human life. So I don't think there's anything more basic and more important than that task alone. So again, I think that's been absolutely crucial. Within the within the local resilience forum, we also have the SCG group, which leads a response. Their objectives and principles are set out there at 4 point. They're the ones that are set out 4.12, I beg your pardon, on page 47, and they actually sit as a subset within the local resilience forum from that side, and that's actually led by the police, isn't it? And we then contribute that in terms of obviously the work they do. I'd also, in addition, just like to mention the local resilience forum in terms of the recovery, the coordinating group that's set out on page 47, 4.17, and you can see there some of the themes there, like health and care, humanitarian, community, business and economy, and transport and infrastructure there as well. One of the other areas which the report covers, of course, is track and trace and vaccination. And so we're all absolutely delighted when we saw that that wonderful lady who was vaccinated today, and what an incredible achievement that has been done. Although I was very pleased to see the second person was called William Shakespeare. Thought that was more than stage humour, that was, but that will be a quiz question in years to come, won't it? Who's the second person who was inoculated for the vaccine? How many people will get that in a pub quiz? So I think that's absolutely delighted. But in terms of track and trace, we've seen recently, of course, the testing facility that's been established in the car park there at the arena facilities. Because obviously testing is and will continue to play a very important part in terms of the COVID recovery and response from that side. In terms of internally, obviously what's very important is the effectiveness and to make sure that we continue to deliver the efficient services. So this really is all about ensuring the things like staff deployment, making sure that we create the COVID secure areas within the authority, we're supporting staff, and it's the absolute heart of what this council does. And again, it's been a huge credit to all our staff who have, whether delivering bins, the community facilities that we deliver, that we've continued, and we've worked very hard to do so. We've had 9 staff with COVID, with another 56 staff with isolating. So those figures alone just cause huge disruption for us that we've had to mitigate. We've seen huge pressure on certain areas of the business, again, unprecedented with lockdown. You've seen things like the average gas collection run has gone up to 300 tonnes, which is enormous. I think that's people drinking more, by the way. I don't think they're using more spices and marmalade, but perhaps that's something that we don't record. We've seen grey blue bin waste go up 10%. Obviously, people at home, people recycling more. So again, it's a good thing in a way, as long as it is ending up in the blue bin and not the grey bins. So that will be interesting. We see at the end of the year. And of course, in services we provide like environmental health. And of course, as I mentioned to the grants, the huge pressure on our finance team, providing not just the grants, but also, of course, the benefits and responding to queries, and also managing a very, very, very difficult and challenging budget that Peter reminds me of just about every week, I think it is. So again, well done to Mr. Linfield and the team in terms of managing those huge challenges that have gone there. I'd just like to also mention in terms of course, leisure, this is probably one of the greatest sectors in the country that's been impacted, understandably so because of the nature and the challenges that brings for social distancing, etc. But we have seen significant financial impact there across our leisure centres. And we've been working very hard with our 2 partners. And again, I compliment the teams under Mr. Banks in particular, who can make the communication going, working as a team, just really trying to make the best of such a really, really bad situation. I'm coming to the end now. Just a few things just to acknowledge as we go forward in terms of some of the important community and support that we've given out the business, like the Reach Fund, the rent holidays for tenants, for instance, and some of the support we've given to businesses hosting the virtual support. So again, these are so important in terms of supporting our communities. Lastly, the report, it talks about the future, and I think we all are absolutely clear that the borough will never ever be the same again. And I don't say that lightly. I think whether it's the way we communicate, whether we work with our businesses, I think we've changed forever, and the impact of COVID will impact this authority for a long time, and many of our residents and many of our businesses. But I think it's really important that we're positive now, particularly with the vaccine. I'm delighted we've got a cabinet meeting, we're delivering the first vaccine. We've seen the mass testing now being much more effective as we go out there, and the responses, and we know we've got to get the economy going again as soon as possible. We've got to get people out there. We've got to get our facilities working again, whether it's our meeting rooms, whether it's our leisure centres, all these areas. I think it is absolutely key as we go forward on there. And of course, lastly, is just really to ensure that we deliver those capital projects. I think it's so important while we come from recovery mode, the huge uplift it will give to our residents to see the leisure centre certainly being developed over at Bingham. We've got the Abbey Road development as well, with that fantastic huge high benchmark for environmentally friendly housing. We've got the crematorium, which we know is absolutely key again to supporting our communities, and we're absolutely dedicated to delivering those. So after that final long narrative, I would finally then just like to move the recommendations which are set out on page 44 on section 2. Sorry, as I just get my iPad live again, as even the iPad's gone to sleep as I speak. And sorry, I just need to just get the so the recommendations that are set out there on page 44, section 2. And it just notes the work of the Office of the Council and partners in responding to and supporting the recovery from COVID-19. And it also sets the terms of the COVID business grant support policy. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edavine.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Robinson. What you didn't mention about the second recipient of the vaccination was not only was he called William Shakespeare, but I believe he also came from Warwickshire. I think it's fair to say in endorsing this recommendation that 2020 has been a year that we would rather not have seen. But however, as a council, we should be very proud, as you've said, of the work our officers have put in to ensure that residents and businesses have been supported wherever possible under the terms of available government funding. Clearly, it is an ongoing process, and this update outlines the considerable support that has been delivered. And as we hopefully move closer to a post-COVID recovery, we must be aware of the many threats that still exist to businesses and employment prospects. And I think you really covered those, but they're highlighted in 4.7 of the report. As a council, we've focused on both our internal response and the impact and future outlook for delivering our own services, and outwardly with an external recovery team. Appendix C, as you've said, gives a full report of the work of the external recovery group and the support it has given, especially to local businesses. And I know from speaking to some of these businesses how important this support has been. It also outlines our future priorities to help deliver our services in key areas for our residents and businesses alike. Obviously, the sector hardest hit, as well as leisure, in the pandemic has been hospitality, and it's important that we continue to offer help and support when it is available. As I say, this is an ongoing process, and this really is a working document that will be continuously updated. But I'm very happy to second the recommendations as outlined by Councillor Robinson. Thank you.
Very much, Cameron. Could I just ask Mrs. Marriott, when will the next COVID update report be brought to Cabinet?
Well, we've done some of the reports have been done as financial updates. What we wanted to do with this one was take the opportunity to really bring quite a lot of information together for you.
Yeah.
Dependent on the a sort of trajectory of the pandemic over the next few weeks, which we very much hope, has levelled off and is starting to decline now. It would be timely to bring another report to you in probably March time, just before, in line with the timeline for setting the budget for the following year. And hopefully by that point, we'll have a much more positive outlook around the rollout of the vaccination, and also, the economy hopefully looking to start to get moving again in 2021.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. I'd also just draw Cabinet members' attention to the report at the end of this report, the recovery report, which is, I think, is absolutely excellent. It includes a lot of things I've talked about, and again, I think that's a really good working document and excellent to read. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. COVID, what a dreadful disease. I personally have lost 3 friends to COVID. So I know how bad it is and the effect it's had on people. But it's also left a massive trail of destruction over the economy, over the area, and it's still going on today. Now, this is an excellent report. It sums up a lot of the good work that's been carried out over the last 9 months, particularly by the Borough Council. But wearing my ward member's hat, I'm seeing an amazing amount of work done in the community. This has dragged out volunteers who I've never met in my life before, and everybody wants to help. We must have, in one of my villages, I must have 20 people who are doing shopping for people. And there's been amazing community spirit. So I see a bit of a plus side on that. Now, I've been involved mainly in the economic business and the financial side, and I won't repeat a lot of it because I've gone on about it at most cabinet meetings over the last 6 to 9 months, and Councillor Robinson's talked about it today. And I'm not going to praise Peter Linfield anymore, but they have done a good job, to be fair. On my ward, which is a reasonably affluent ward, I'm dealing with things that I've never really come across in my 15 years as a councillor. I'm dealing with debt. I'm dealing with some poverty, people who've fallen between the various benefit gaps. I'm dealing with serious mental health issues. And this is a knock-on effect from, as Councillor Robinson said, of unemployment and the effect it is having on the community. I've never come across anything like this in 15 years as a councillor. And I'm just going to repeat a little bit of what Councillor Robinson said, because one item that stuck out for me on the report was item 4.7, and it talks about the recovery strategy. I've been focused on the financial side, the businesses. You might have heard my phone earlier. This is a local restaurateur who's ringing me now to see whether we can go into level 2. He's actually on his knees, and my heart goes out for him. So I've got to ring him back after this meeting. But this item 4.7, it talks about health and care. Yeah, very important. Very important once we get the vaccine. Humanitarian and community. Some of these communities have got to pick themselves back up together again. I'm seeing it around, and I really look forward to that. Business and economy, we've discussed it. We know what we're doing. We're doing a fantastic job. And I wrote transport and infrastructure, and I know Councillor Robinson said it, but to see several infrastructure projects from us will be a major, major benefit to the community. It will create jobs. It might create apprenticeships. It will create community spirit, particularly over in Bingham. And I look forward to the schools being involved, apprenticeships being involved, everything there. So I'm pleased to see now, and the focus has got to be now on recovery, and it's going to take a while. We can't do this instantly. I reckon it's going to be at least 12 months or more till we're back to some form of normality. And as Councillor Robinson said, what is the new normality going to be? I don't think I'm going to be shaking hands with people for many years. You know, I might still wear a mask. I'm going to be careful. There will be some, might be doing a lot more working from home, but hopefully we get back to some normality. And what this report shows to me, and congratulations to Mrs. Marriott and the team, is that Rushcliffe have done a fantastic job, but you're ready for the recovery and you're geared up for the recovery. And so I'm very, very happy to support this report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Moore. And I think you made a very good point that obviously we've talked all about Rushcliffe and our partners with the LEPs and the County Council, etc., and police, but also the parish councils have played a very important part as well in terms of helping and supporting our communities. They are the closest to there. And I think many of those have actually stepped up as well. And it's been a tremendous team effort, as of a lot of community groups as well. And I'd also like to pay tribute to a lot of members who've really gone over and above their duties to make sure that people looked after in their ward. So, yeah, I think that sort of recognition and team spirit has really, really pulled us through here. And we know the vaccine isn't going to be a magic policy or a magic step for us, because it's going to take a long time to roll it out. And but let's be optimistic, and let's hope that the absolute priority is that we can get the key measurements down, like the infection rates over 6 days, hospital admissions, etc., because they're the ones that are going to drive us down, hopefully into tier 1, and then we might actually have an existence outside of a tier. I don't think whether we'll be able to exist or not, or make any decisions what we want to do. But let's really hope that we can go forward. So if we could move the recommendations out by myself, seconded by Councillor Edivin. Anybody against, or anybody like to abstain? No. That's lovely. Okay, carry unanimously. So that concludes the business of the Cabinet. I'd just like to wish everybody a very, very happy Christmas, and thank you for all your efforts over the year in this very difficult time. We very much look forward to seeing you in